You are watching a Fact TV presentation of the town of Swanzey.
going to call the July 23rd Planning Board meeting to order. Our agenda items, well, I'll take minutes, take attendance first. I'm Victoria Reck Ames, and I'm present. Scott Self.
I'm here.
Mark Scalera.
Here.
Richard Lane.
Here.
Brandon Self.
Here.
Michael York.
Here.
Selectmen's Rep Alan Gross.
Here.
Stacy Goodale and Charlie Harbeck will not be here tonight, and Jane Johnson is here. We don't need to seat anybody, any alternates. And the agenda is as follows. First item is to approve the minutes of July 9, 2026. Then we're going to have a casual discussion of a site plan, a public hearing. Following that is a public hearing on our site plan review regulation. It's a change. We're considering amending Section 7, Article 6D of the site plan review regulations to clarify that a plat must be signed by a registered engineer or surveyor only if one was used to create it. Following that, we have a discussion of home-based childcare zoning, and then any other business shall come before us. So first order is to consider the minutes of July 9, 2026. Are there any changes, additions, deletions?
I have one on page 2, and that would be the second to the last paragraph from the bottom on page 2. And it reads, a motion was made by Scott Self to grant the request for the waivers because they are consistent with the site plan regulations. I maybe didn't say this, but it should have read that they are consistent with the intent of the site plan review regulations. And that's the only thing I have.
Okay. Anybody else? Any changes? Entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the July 9, 2026 meeting as corrected.
And I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Regional impact statement. Does anything on the agenda qualify as a development of regional impact requiring notification of neighboring municipalities?
I would make a motion that there's nothing on there that requires us to notify the surrounding towns.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. I don't imagine there's any discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's have our site plan review discussion.
Good evening, John Newman with Fieldstone Lane Consultants, here on behalf of Environmental Alternatives Incorporated, or EAI. So we were looking to submit an application, and then it came up on the question of what type of application should we submit for a building change. So I just want to grab the mic and walk through. We're looking for guidance on how to submit this application, because this was the last site plan modification where we increased the size of this second building. This is on right at the bottom of Safford Drive in Wilson Pond. And they've constructed this building, roughed in the parking lot. All the stormwater management was built last fall and is stabilized. They now want to increase the size of this building as well. So they're finding that the equipment that they're purchasing is much larger, and their volume of contracts is increasing substantially. So they're trying to make the second building larger as well. So on the previously approved, this building was 40 by 80 feet, and the other building was 60 by 120. And what they'd like to do is go an additional 20 feet in length. So this would end up being the 40 by 100 feet is what they're anticipating. The parking spaces that were on the end here, we've just relocated to the side. We did lose one parking space, so we had 22 spaces total before. We now have 21. But with this application, when I reached out to Adam and we were discussing it, was the larger building was already done as a site plan modification, and it could be that this enlargement wouldn't allow for another site plan modification, and we'd either have to do a new application, and with that new application, we have setbacks from the buffer. So when this was initially approved and also the site plan modification, there was no wetland buffer. So we're in the industrial park zoning, which is a 50-foot buffer. I just measured is the closest point to the wetland to the building is 76 feet. So we're not any closer to, or we're closer, but we're not encroaching that 50 feet. And the site improvements that are within that 50 feet are exactly as what was previously approved within that buffer, which is the gravel, the drive in the back, and this pavement would be just, basically the edge of the pavement would be about where that 50 feet of that buffer would be at the closest point here. This is probably within the 50 feet here. However, this edge of the building is exactly in the same orientation and proximity to the wetland as it was previously. The building just went 20 feet to the north. So we wanted to come and ask, how should this application be submitted to the board? Is it a conditional use permit, or is it that these are previous impacts within that buffer that were approved when the buffer didn't exist, or is it just a site plan application, or were we back to a second site plan modification?
That's a good question.
You had thoughts, Adam. Do you want to share why you encouraged John to come?
Yeah, so my initial thoughts on this is that this exceeds the scope of the site plan modification. We thought the last one also exceeded the scope of the site plan modification. This is more than a minor increase in square footage, and we don't think it warrants a conditional use permit because he is remaining outside of those buffer areas for the industrial park district. He's not expanding to the, where's north on that? Is it north where is it right now? So he's not,
So basically, we're expanding to the north.
yeah, but not to the east.
We're not any further to the east.
Okay, so he's not going further to the east, which is where he's closest to the wetlands, and the north side of the building would remain outside of that 50-foot buffer. So we're not expecting the need of a conditional use permit, but we do. It is still our opinion that it would trigger a new site plan. But I encouraged him to come today just to speak to the board about it to see what the board's thoughts were.
What specifically in the zoning do you feel triggers that need for a new site?
Additional square footage.
Just total square
Yep.
footage, okay. Can you direct us to that page? The regulations that,
So site plan review regulations, page 3, governs site plan modifications. The bottom of page 3 specifically. So again, I mean, this is under the board's purview, whether or not, you read those and interpret them how you like.
I'm not seeing which,
Page 3, right?
page 3, under general?
Under 6. I don't know, 6.
Oh, okay, I guess I have the whole.
Okay.
Thoughts from the board?
Not having
I can
a heads
read
up
them.
on this coming at us,
I'm sorry?
not having a heads up about this coming at us.
We talked late yesterday. I mean,
But he,
So I just.
so people can
Chance
speak at
to-
board meetings. People are allowed to come to board meetings and speak at their,
Yes.
at
Well,
their
no,
will, so.
he's not asking for an approval, but he's asking for an opinion on how to proceed, which is fine at a regular meeting. I
Yeah, he's
think.
not submitting an application today.
But
I would like to have had some time to look at something and review it.
There was no time, unfortunately.
let me read the site plan
Yeah, no, I
modifications,
can-
just
I
for
can
anybody who
read it
doesn't have it
also.
up. Under site plan modifications, it says the site plan modifications may be approved at a regularly scheduled meeting without a public hearing, but if the board determines that the proposed modification is minor in nature and conforms with all requirements of these site plan review regulations and conforms to all the conditions of the originally approved site plan and would not alter the general layout and use of the approved site plan. And then they go on to say examples of the modifications include, but are not limited to, minor changes in the location of utilities, minor adjustments in the placement of structures, minor changes to the landscaping plans to include a change in layout, species of plants, etc. Replacement of a structure that is the same footprint and gross square footage of the original structure. Any modification that affects an abutter, setback, screening, traffic lighting, shall require a public hearing in accordance with RSA 676-4I, or 1. So the board can determine whether they think that this is a minor change to a site plan or not. He's moving 20 feet, or actually extending that building 20 feet to the north by the looks. And he's going to be not in that 50-foot, you measured that, you said around 75 feet.
Yeah, it's just a
In that
little
area.
over 76 feet. I would
76.
say 76.
That's after the addition, correct? That's after the 20-foot extension?
Correct.
You said that, yeah.
Correct.
Okay. So really, that's all it is. And we don't have a square footage requirement in there, in my opinion. I'm just giving my opinion of it there. We don't have a square footage requirement, what is a minor and not a minor. It's up to the board to decide on each individual case, I think. So that's what we're looking at.
So I'm wondering, on the north side of the, if the building that's proposed to be enlarged is enlarged, on the north face of that building, is there parking beyond, is there, what was there before and what will be there? I'm wondering about how will parking and circulation change as a result, will that push those activities further into the wetland? I know
No,
the building
so-
won't be in the wetland,
He
but,
got rid of the.
So we had 3 parking spaces on this north side
Yeah.
on the approved plan.
yeah,
They are now on this east side.
okay. So there will be nothing, is there any reason to drive around will it be like a loading bay or anything on that end of the building?
No, and originally we had a overhead door on this as
Okay.
a loading door to the building. They
Yeah.
removed that. There's no door
Okay,
there now.
Okay. And on the new
So
building, the smaller
the
building?
entryways are all on the drive aisle parking area.
Okay,
Yep. So traffic will likely loop through, could loop through or go either direction, but nobody's going to be parking over.
all right.
On that end.
But people will be driving closer to that wetland?
No, this edge of pavement is no closer than it was before in the
Okay,
previous plan.
okay.
It's just where the parking spaces were are now building.
Got it, okay.
So our overall, another point too, our overall impervious cover
Yeah.
is identical to what was approved.
Okay.
It's just now building instead of parking lot, and the side that was paved before is just now striped as parking spaces.
So Adam, you were thinking that because there was a prior modification, this would be a modification on top of a modification? Is that what?
So
what you
this
were
is
thinking?
why, this is one of the main reasons I wanted John to come speak to the board. The site plan review regulations leave it pretty open on how you interpret minor, which I think is on purpose, and I
Yeah.
think it's good. There is a little bit of friction on page 2, where it does actually govern how we should be triggering site plan review with expansions, so external modifications consisting of 100 square feet or greater to a building. So we do have regulations in place that, of course, the planning board you guys can waive, but I think this should maybe, put something in our brains to think about for further rewrites to the site plan review regulations. We have this friction between when we need a site plan and the newly adopted site plan modification regulations. Maybe we should be rewriting these sections to accommodate what we have been experiencing with an uptick in site plan modifications, better define minor, something along those lines. But the board, it's under the board's purview to waive any portion of these regulations that they see fit. So again, this is why John wanted to come speak to the board.
So it sounds like the question before the board is, we've decided, or it seems clear that we don't need a conditional use permit. I think everybody is in agreement on that. So it's either, will we be asking for a new site plan or a site plan modification?
And it would be the second site plan modification for the site. We have no limit on the number of modifications the board can approve, of course, but just keep that in the back of your minds.
I think it'd be a site plan modification myself.
Jane, immediate thoughts?
I think this came for us years ago. I'm going back to when they first put Easy Creek there.
That's not
Yeah.
the,
No, this
that's
is a
not the
different,
site,
this
that's
is a
not the one.
different application.
No.
Okay, no, I don't have any thoughts on it.
Okay.
I haven't been here enough to know.
Okay. I'm leaning towards a modification. It seems like nothing else is really changing in terms of how the site's being used. It's just the building is larger. That's all I'm hearing,
Right.
unless there's more.
It is, it's just, and there's no changes to the utilities either. So it's just the building is where the parking was before, and the parking is on the other side now.
I'm in agreement with that because it's not contrary to the spirit and intent of these regulations, and it conforms to all the conditions of the originally approved site plan, as it notes in here. Would not alter the general layout or use of the approved site plan. So, yeah, I think it's a modification, and we could do it. I don't know, we could approve it at another meeting because it should be posted as that.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm all set, it's modification.
Alan,
I agree.
Richard, modification?
Yeah, so, I mean, based on prior approval, it would be approved more than likely anyway. It is 800 square feet, which is not insignificant, but based on this, I think it's a site plan modification as well.
No, it's more than 100 square feet. That was just the guideline.
Huh?
It's more than 100 square feet.
800.
He said 800.
800, okay.
I
That's
said,
what it is.
you know, this is 800
Oh, I
square
thought you
feet.
said 100, okay.
Okay, great. So we were going to submit on August 6th, which would get us on the next.
If you want to submit your site plan mod, there's no abutter requirement for site plan mods. So you can get me that application before the next packet goes out. And you can be on the 13th. Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
Yep.
All right, excellent. Well, thank
Thanks
you
for
for your
coming
time
in.
and hearing.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
See you at the next meeting. Thank
Thanks,
you.
John. See ya.
See ya.
Thanks for making us think.
Thank you for coming in.
You might be here a bit longer the next meeting, unfortunately.
Maybe not.
All right, we have a public hearing, which I think we can dispatch with pretty quickly, so let's do that. And this hearing is for a site plan review regulation change. The board will consider amending Section 7, Article 6D of the site plan review regulations to clarify that a plat must be signed by a registered engineer or surveyor only if one was used to create it. And the way this section would, the revised language of this section would be, no certificate of occupancy shall be issued until 2 copies of the site plan are signed by the chair of the planning board. No site plan shall be signed until all conditions related to the approval are placed on the plan. The board receives final unconditional approval from the Swanzey Fire Department, and the plan is signed by a registered engineer or surveyor if applicable. Any discussion?
No, it belongs in there. That's a good catch.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we...
Oh, wait, did I need to open the public hearing?
Oh, you already did.
I did, okay.
Let's just close it if we're ready.
All right, then I will close the public hearing at this point.
I'll second Brendan's motion.
Which happened before I closed them.
Okay,
Or after.
I'll formally make the motion now.
Thank you,
I'll formally second.
thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Now we have a discussion of home-based childcare zoning. Would you like to come forward? Is that how you anticipated handling this? Okay. All right.
Yeah, hopefully you all had enough time to read the memo. Before we get started, I think you guys have had like 3 weeks. Any questions before we dig into this?
About what we're discussing or questions?
No, the child care zoning.
Childcare zoning, I have the same question I had the last time where it concerns the child-based, or I guess allow the home-based, or I think it's the child care groups. There are several different names in here that we're going by. We have to dwindle it down to a few. But it's in the commercial industrial district where if there are no businesses, I think it reads something like no businesses that would interfere with the child care facility, it would be allowed in that area. But then I'm wondering, well, if there aren't any businesses there now and it goes into that area, then we can't put another business in by it, if you know what I mean. If it takes up some of our space in our commercial industrial, which we want for that, and the childcare facility goes in there, then it kind of obstructs the use of the area. So that's my question as to, you know, how do we get around that one, not put it in there? Because we could not put it in there, but it says about commercial, doesn't it, Sarah?
I think this might be off.
It's manufacturing and industrial.
Yeah.
So that does imply our commercial industrial zone and industrial zone. We'll get back to that, because you're right, that's a pretty good question. And Stefan and I did a bit of background searching at Town Hall to see if there are any current uses in those zones that would disrupt childcare. We'll get to it. So we'll start at the beginning here. The purpose of the memo in front of you that Sarah worked so hard on is HB 1195 created RSA 67481, which I haven't been able to find quite yet. I don't think it's in the...
Just recently posted.
Got it, okay, that's why. So we'll get that sent out to the board when I get that. It would require us, the town of Swanzey, to allow child care centers by right on commercially zoned land. RSA 67481 will also disallow site plan review for child care centers with fewer than 30 children.
Which one are we going on, Adam? We're going on the 674-16 or HB 1567? Because we're talking about residential as well, aren't we?
Yep, I'm getting to that.
But you're into the commercial one instead.
Yeah, so 67481 relates to commercially zoned land. What is the RSA that relates to residential land, Sarah?
That's 674-16.
16.
Yeah.
I believe Roman numeral 6. 674-16, Roman numeral 6.
So we'll get to that when we talk about recommendations, because really this whole memo is about recommendations for how we should be proceeding in response to these amendments / creation of new RSAs. Sorry. So the Community Development Finance Authority, they're funding technical assistance through the regional planning commissions to help selected New Hampshire communities update local zoning ordinances to reduce barriers to childcare. The project focuses on municipal zoning barriers affecting family-based childcare providers and is intended to help communities comply with recent state legislation. SWRPC is participating. They have identified us as a strong candidate through a screening process. That takes into consideration zoning compliance, youth population, existing childcare availability, potential local impact. Swanzey was identified by MEDC as a candidate for work. Project fits well within the town's broader zoning audit, which we've been working on. While the audit is focused on identifying areas for improvement and pointing to available model language where appropriate, the child care zoning project is supported by several external grants and includes assistance with fully developing proposed amendment language for planning board consideration. SWRPC doesn't recommend regulating family daycare homes or group family daycare homes under the home occupation or home-based business provisions. Instead, we should be addressing these as a separate category of accessory residential use. So this is now getting into the residential section. Let's dig into the amendment approach to these two legislative, I'm losing my words here. These two legislative changes.
We know what you mean.
Yeah. It's again, you know, we're being responsive to the state's legislative pushes. The first recommendation that SWRPC recommends is SWRPC recommends placing this provision in a new accessory use subsection of the general zoning provisions. I'm looking on page 3 of this memo. It has proposed language on page 3 that would be in section 3 as it exists today.
So,
No, sorry, go.
So I can understand why it's in the accessory use section there, but I'm wondering if it will get missed under the uses section. Yeah, we don't know what the organization is yet that you're going to come up with, but, you know, if someone didn't read the accessory use section and read just the uses for, we'll say, residential, and they didn't see it in there, then it wouldn't register. So I don't know, you probably are going to handle that with not a graph, I'm talking about a chart, correct?
Well, there's a few things. This is drafted so that it can work in your existing ordinance or in future reorganization. But a piece of this that is up to the board to determine what you want to do is the state is not mandating that this has to be permissible in every residence in your community. It's just in every district where primary residential use is lawful. And so in the business district, for instance, you couldn't build a home there right now. Well, multifamily you could, but you couldn't build a new single-family home. But you already have single-family homes that exist there. So you have the discretion to determine if you want this to be an accessory use to all lawfully existing primary residential uses, or if you want to apply it exclusively district by district where primary residential is allowed.
That makes sense. That
And
makes
so with
sense.
that in mind, you
Yeah.
could go in each section as you're suggesting, or I'm proposing in section 3 as an accessory use, so that it could be more of a broad swath for,
For any residential, I think that's probably makes more sense to do it that way.
but
Yeah.
again, it's the purview of this board, what direction you'd like to take and what you'd like to present to the town.
And I know that you've got in the back of it suggestions about whether it should be allowed in rural ag as well, because that's not a residential unit, but that would cover rural ag, wouldn't it?
Well, actually, that is applicable to the child care centers. So
Oh,
maybe we
only.
should back
Okay.
it up just
Yeah.
a little bit to make sure everybody's on the same page with what we're talking about, because the state's given us a lot of words to talk about in home daycare, and they call it family daycare homes and group family daycare homes. And part of the recommendation is that you guys adopt definitions for this, which are in alignment with statute. And so I'm just going to go over these very quickly. At the bottom of page 3, we have family daycare home. A family daycare home as defined in RSA 170-E:2, Roman numeral 4, parentheses A, childcare provided in an occupied residence for less than 24 hours per day, except in emergencies, generally for up to 6 children from one or more unrelated families, subject to applicable state licensing requirements. In addition to the 6 children, up to 3 children attending full-day school program may also be cared for up to 5 hours per day on school days and all day during school holidays, provided that the after-school and holiday increase in capacity is permitted by the state fire code and is compliance with any local ordinance. So that's your smallest provider, and that would be, you have a question?
I do. That language, is that the language that the law is requiring us to use? Okay.
They're not requiring you to use that language, but that is the lawful definition.
Okay.
And I think to reduce confusion, it's useful to have that in there, whether it's for a provider or for a land use board who have to determine the use.
For sure. But it's not language that we're going to be likely to tweak. Not that I'm seeing a reason to do that, but that is the language we're going to be using.
Group family daycare home. A group family daycare home, as defined, insert the RSA, childcare provided in an occupied residence for less than 24 hours per day, except in emergencies, generally for 7 to 12 children from one or more unrelated families, subject to applicable state licensing requirements. In addition to the 12 children, up to 5 children attending full-day school may also be cared for up to 5 hours per day on school days and all day during school holidays, provided that the after-school and holiday increasing capacity is permitted by state fire code and any local ordinance. So the difference that you're seeing here, if you had a group family daycare home, number one, you're going to have increased square footage in that home that is licensed area for capacity for children, and you're going to have more than one adult taking care of the children. But one of the adults taking care of the children would need to be a resident of that home.
And those are the two that are going to be required in residential areas,
Yes.
right? And the only reason for the two definitions, because it almost seems like one would take care of it, because it's the same thing. One of them has more students in it, or more kids in it, is all up to 12 in the other one. So it wouldn't make sense to have it 0 to 12, because you have the two categories, and it's the square footage that you just talked about, correct? Square footage, and it's required by, and I forget where I read this in there, but by the rules set up for these daycare centers, correct, state rules? So you still have to have the two definitions in there, right?
Yeah, and it does take care of one of the main problems with the broader ordinance, but with also child care centers and how they're defined in our ordinance. Sarah laid it out very nicely on page 4 here. Swanzey's ordinance currently uses several terms for child-based care centers. We have daycare facility, daycare or kindergarten facility, and child care facility. So those uses would be moved into those two other definitions, and we could clean up our ordinance a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we have a third definition for child care center. So this is the commercial stuff, which is sort of part 2 of this conversation, but just for the sake of it, so we're all on the same page. On page 5, definition for child care center: a child daycare agency other than a family daycare home or group family daycare home that provides child daycare outside of a residence through one or more of the following program types: group child daycare center, infant and toddler program, night care program, preschool program, school age program, small group child daycare center, or any combination thereof as defined in RSA 170B2, and regulated by the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services. This term is intended to correspond with child care center as defined in RSA 67481 as amended. So this is meant to be a commercial facility, never in a residence.
And would this be for 12 kids or over or more?
Yeah, 13 or more children.
13 or more children, because the others go up to
But
12.
it could potentially be for 10 children if it's not in a residence.
Okay, yeah, and up to 30, I guess I read somewhere in there, is that it? Or it can go over 30?
So the 30 limit is where site plan review kicks in.
Oh, yeah, over 30, the site plan kicks in.
Yes.
And that's for, yeah, it's all the commercial areas there.
So if we back it up, now that we know all of the terms and what we're talking about, because they kind of trip you up, did you guys have any questions on what is being proposed for the home daycare?
Not really. It's pretty self-explanatory there. It just depends, I guess, the real question is how we want to do it, isn't it? Yeah, not me anyways, I don't know about anybody else.
Which districts? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, we're-
in terms of how you want to do it, what do you mean by that?
How we want to do it, whether we want to do it by district, or whether we want to say any lawfully residential home could have one of these in it. Either way, that'd cover all districts, or we could do district by district.
We were definitely in favor of the broader approach.
Yeah, I
It
think
makes
that
more sense.
would be easier, I think, to read and understand maybe if it was just any residential or lawful residential unit could have one of these in there if they had the space.
Yeah.
And it's the Department of Health and Human Services that actually inspects it for the space? That's how they, before they open it up?
And the town actually has a couple signatures on that form.
Okay,
So
so
we do see the form while it's in review.
So does it ever come before the planning board?
Never.
It's by right, correct? So it goes through the land use office though and code enforcement,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
It shouldn't really even go through code enforcement.
No?
It should go through fire and health.
Yeah, it'll go through health. The last, the last home daycare that we reviewed, they had a zoning signature. I don't know if that's normal thing?
It is a normal thing, but they're trying to do away with it. So
Okay.
this law does away with that. So there should be a letter or signature from the municipality stating that the use is permitted where the residence is, but because it's not permitted everywhere in an obvious way in Swanzey zoning, I don't know. I don't think they got a variance for special exception.
No.
I can't remember.
No, it was just home-based business.
Okay.
So the health officer, sounds like they'll review this newly defined process,
Yeah.
which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't ever come before you guys again. And it frankly shouldn't come before Adam again either, unless somebody's just calling because they want to do it and they're not sure if they can.
Right.
Just to be clear, we're talking about family daycare home or a group family daycare
Yes.
home. We're not talking about the child care center.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And so we can add in, for the proposed language for family daycare homes and group family daycare homes, shall be permitted by right as an accessory use on any lot where primary residential use lawfully exists or is permitted.
And again, that would allow it in all the zones that there is a residential use in. If there's a house in a business district, like Sarah said, it would be allowed there. If there's one in rural ag, it'd be allowed there, which kind of makes sense to me anyways, to do it that way instead of breaking it up if there's any, unless there's a reason to break it up.
It makes sense to me.
So if there was a house in commercial, industrial, if there is an existing house there, it would not be allowed there.
It would, actually. If it's a lawful residence, it would. But only one of these, not the commercial one we're talking about, only one of these smaller ones. And again, I guess if the Health and Human Services allowed it as well, I think they have more sway over it than we would at that point. But it would, under this, it would be allowed, any lawful residence.
Yeah, we did a brief review of businesses in the commercial industrial district and the industrial park district, and we couldn't identify, at least yet, it would take some time, but we couldn't identify any current uses that would be harmful to these uses, especially these smaller facilities. We just don't see the harm in allowing these smaller childcare facilities in homes.
The two ones we're just talking about
Yep.
there, right?
Yeah, childcare centers are different
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
Do you guys know offhand if you have many residences in the commercial industrial
We
district?
have a fair number, yeah, off of Route 12. Let me double check.
Because I know that one's the buffer on Route 10 that ends kind of before you get into West Swansea proper.
Yeah. Yeah, northwest
So-
Swansea.
Some of them are like around the Base Hill Road area that.
Yes, yeah.
So,
Yeah, if you're turning left, if you're coming into Swansea, turn left on Base Hill Road. Everything along that stretch is commercial industrial.
there's not too much commercial and industrial probably going to be built up there unless some of those homes are leveled, so.
Yeah, with the lack of water and sewer out there especially.
Yeah, so really, one of those could go in there and wouldn't really disrupt anything.
Excuse me, if a home is in a business district established and there's open land behind it, it's still in business, and there's a daycare center where the home daycare with the max number of kids or whatever, how do we, or is there a restriction on what can go in to that remaining area, or can we create a buffer, or is there a buffer type of thing that can be established?
In your business district, you don't allow any uses that would be incompatible with home daycare use. Because you don't allow manufacturing or toxic substances and that sort of thing. I believe I'm not sure you allow that, toxic substances anywhere.
No, we don't. Not by right, at least.
And so for commercial industrial, do you allow manufacturing in commercial industrial?
Yes.
Mhm.
We look at-
Processing and things like that.
But even that, I don't think would preclude a home daycare center.
Yeah,
Home childcare.
there is a line specifically in the It's D1, it's Section 6A D1. Establishments engaged in manufacturing, assembly, compounding, processing, packaging, treatment, or distribution of products, including primary product production from raw materials, but excluding such establishments which produce or emit dust, refuse matter, toxic or noxious gases, odors and fumes, excessive noise, etc. So we explicitly prohibit those activities, which would cause some problems in proximity to daycare facilities.
Does that answer your question?
Just in my head, I'm just thinking of, what if we have like a transfer situation, business? And what I mean by that is, say like FedEx, they're receiving, it's a business, they're receiving stuff, putting, and then sending out stuff. If that company or somebody has a daycare center, is there a problem there or not?
I don't believe so. Department of Health and Human Services, they do have rules in HEC 4002 regarding safety of outdoor spaces and fencing provisions and gates and locks and all of that. So if the question is, would a child, kind of get out?
Wander?
Wander and be put in harm's way. And there are a lot of protections with the home licensing, and they have regular inspections, at least annual. So there's a lot built into that. I'd encourage you to spend a little bit of time with HEC 4002 because it'll help you feel, number one, like you don't want to do home-based daycare because it's so strict, but also just learning how many protections are built in there. It's meant to create safe environments for children.
What about someone who has a, I guess, daycare center or facility, as in our zoning anyway, who doesn't go through the Health and Human Services part of it? That would, they would just be watching, say, 5 kids or something like that.
So that's actually illegal. You can have up to 4 children and be license exempt, but you're still supposed to file with the state to be license exempt. So again, that's only 4 children. And providers can slip under the radar and not participate in licensing. That's absolutely something that happens, but there are a lot of benefits for providers to become licensed or license exempt. One benefit is the families that they provide care for can apply for New Hampshire State Childcare scholarships, so that more kids can have access to care. And especially when you have these smaller home-based businesses, they're usually charging less, so they're able to offer care to families that are in more need. They also can apply for the New Hampshire State Food and Nutrition Program and have some of the food supplemented in their program, but they can't do that unless they become license exempt or licensed. So, and there are a lot of training resources and other resources that providers get plugged into if they're in the system. So they try to make it mostly carrot and not a lot of stick to get providers in compliance. But if somebody's flying under the radars.
And the zoning is not going to require them, in other words, to get a license. It's just going to put the carrots in there that they'd want to get a license.
Yeah.
Okay.
Strongly encourage them to.
Yeah, in that way, but there'll still be some that, slide under the radar there. That the daycare now in homes, it's there. It's not necessarily purview of the planning board, but it's there. It has been forever. These will make it a little bit better, maybe. They'll be able to accept some kind of funding, I think I read in there somehow too, right? Some kind of funding they can accept?
Yes, so there's funding for the state, but there's also a program through Manhattan Economic Development Corporation right now where home providers can get grants of up to $50,000 for home improvements and such to bring their homes into licensing standards. So
It's quite a carrot right there.
yeah. Pretty big carrot. Are there any other questions or changes for the home-based care section?
It looks like the board has agreed on the broad-based one.
Are we kind of following along with the bullet points on page 7? Is that how we're working through this?
Not yet,
Okay.
but sure.
Okay.
I mean, we could. We'd probably be faster if we did. So moving on to childcare centers. As I believe Adam said, HB 1195 was adopted earlier this month. And so this requires municipalities to allow childcare centers by right on commercially zoned land. So it says commercially zoned, and you guys have to distinguish which of your districts you consider to be commercial. Because your commercial industrial doesn't necessarily have to be commercial. Your industrial park district does not need to be commercial. Your business district does. So that's just sort of food for thought of how this would fit. So childcare centers allowed by right on commercially zoned land, provided they meet applicable licensing requirements. It also allows an existing building or non-conforming building within a commercial district or a portion therein to be converted to a childcare center if the exterior dimensions do not change. Local site plan may still apply if the licensed capacity exceeds 30 children. And that's the one part that I don't want to be like, this is a hard pill to swallow for everybody, but it is, because a business that gets to just skirt site plan review is kind of a big deal, and I don't know if this is something that's going to change in the next 2 years once we see some centers coming through. But this is the big piece of this that I want to make sure you guys are aware of when you determine where you want to allow this in your community.
To clarify, just because I need some clarification, village business 1, 2, and business.
Oh, yes.
So it does have to be permitted in
Yes.
those 3, because those are very clearly commercially zoned.
Yes.
But what the board needs to consider is commercial, industrial, and industrial.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other piece to consider is right now your zoning allows childcare centers in the rural district, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes.
And that's wonderful, and this doesn't say that you don't need to do that anymore, but if you're going to actually define childcare center in your ordinance, you should be aware that anything that you are permitting through this work that I presented to you would currently also be allowed in the rural ag district, and you need to determine if you agree that that's still appropriate.
Would you say that, explain it again? I think I must have missed somewhere through the center, the place you're going.
So childcare centers are, I don't remember if it's special exception or if they're permitted by right.
They're straight permitted. The way they're identified in rural ag is daycare or kindergarten facility, which is one of the fun.
As part
So-
of this would be consolidating your terminology.
So you're saying that the childcare centers would be allowed in those areas that Adam just said, correct? Or no? Yes.
In those 3
Yes,
areas,
yeah.
village business 1, 2, and business, but then also potentially rural ag, because as it stands today, daycare or kindergarten facility is a permitted use by right in rural
Okay,
ag.
so it would fall over onto that?
It would
Because
just-
we'd be changing,
It would just be replacing daycare or
Yeah.
kindergarten facility with
with the center, right? daycare
Yeah,
center.
childcare center, yeah.
Okay, okay, now I get it.
So I just want to make you guys aware of that.
Yeah.
'Cause
I have feelings about that.
I think if it's permitted now, with all the land, it's a 3-acre minimum, I think it should still be permitted by right.
But again, it wouldn't be subject to site plan review though, would it? If it was under 30,
Yeah, under 30, no site plan.
no site plan, so, I don't
However,
know.
we haven't written it this way, but however, because you're not required to allow it by right in rural ag, you could still potentially require site plan in rural ag for under 30 children.
Okay.
Because
That's
the
good to
state
know.
hasn't gotten that far.
Okay.
I'm not sure, I have feelings about this. Just looking at the purpose and intent of the rural ag district, this district is designed to accommodate residences and agricultural uses in what is commonly recognized as being a rural atmosphere. The property included within this district will generally be agriculture and forestry, low-density housing, open space protection, water supply protection, and recreation. So I'm not, there's lack of clarity in what we intended when we had three different definitions. We listed childcare facility, daycare facility, and daycare or kindergarten facility. I think it would be reasonable for us to reconsider the decision to permit by right which would, to me, feels like a business use in the rural agricultural district, a large daycare facility.
Where we
there's
were
the
coming from was more of the education opportunities that are afforded to rural properties and daycare facilities. I'm thinking of a few in Keene off the top of my head that offer really awesome experiences for children in more rural settings, working on farmland. And I think there are cool opportunities to be had in rural agricultural districts that business district might not offer. So.
Thoughts from the board?
Could move it to special exception?
Can we do that in this new framework? Would it be a special, because that would bring it before the CBA?
Good for rural ag.
Yeah.
Because it's not a business district, it's not a commercial district. So that's, again, what I'm trying to bring your attention to is anything that you allow with the child care center provisions that I am presenting you with would apply to rural ag unless you change something in rural ag. And special exception or conditional use permit or something like that would still be permissible by statute, but you just don't have it yet.
I would absolutely want site plan review provision in that district, personally.
Should we, I don't think we have to talk about this in depth today. Maybe we wait for a public hearing. But I think a special exception would be fine because not every rural ag district property is the same. A lot of them aren't even 3 acres. So having an extra layer there for review should be okay. I think maybe if we require site plan review, we should identify the threshold of children that would trigger the site plan review. Because I think it would be silly to require site plan review for what's childcare center?
12, up to 12, I think it was one. The
Yeah.
other one, the residential one you're
I
talking
think
about?
there's a point where a site plan review makes sense, but there's a point where it doesn't make sense.
I'm talking about the child care center
Yeah.
in the
But
rural ag,
It's like over 12.
which is over 30 children, right?
But Adam was saying we should ought to put a limit on it, which makes sense too.
If there's
If it triggers it, over 12 triggers it, something like that.
something, I don't know.
Because we'd allow them, if there's a single-family home in that rural ag, and they could put up one of these other centers up to 12 kids. So if they want more than 12 kids, it would probably be a child care center. So if it were 12 and over, would trigger the site plan review maybe.
So this is a part where the definitions, the statutory definitions are not quite nuanced enough because they're determining a child care center is something that exists separate from a residence. However, it can become a child care center based, you can't have a child care center unless the teachers have a specific level of education. And I bring this up because a daycare provider that you have in town was once home-based, but it was actually a center in her home because she had the proper education and licensing, so she could have more than 12 children in her home. She now has center-based site, so it's no longer in her home, it's in a non-residential facility, but that distinction also matters because you have already had child care centers in rural ag that were not, that were accessory residential. So the way the statute is written conflicts a little bit with the way the 4002 licensing requirements is written. So, yeah.
What's the workaround? What would you suggest for a workaround?
I think a conditional use permit is reasonable, or a special exception. But considering that right now, none of that applies, and it hasn't been a problem. So I would just put that out there for consideration for you all. It's allowed by right, and there hasn't been a flood of childcare centers that have been built in rural ag in Swanzey. And I don't want to say, continue as you've gone on, because, there's certainly merit in trying to stay ahead of things, but it may be a non-issue.
I'm not sure about that, because I feel like the picture has changed, okay? The intent of this legislation is to change the picture, to make building a child care center more attractive to a commercial enterprise, for example. So much of what's happened historically has been home-based, parent-based, teacher-based, but I think there can be different pressures at this point that we should be trying to anticipate.
I still think we're going to be seeing majority home-based. Thinking about the cost of opening a child care center and how expensive it is, especially for providers. I come from a family of teachers and daycare providers, and they're all home-based just because it makes more sense, especially when you have a large property in the rural ag district and you might have some space for up to 12 kids, 7 to 12 kids. I don't think we're going to see a flood of centers. I think we're going to see more home-based care. I don't think we're going to see a flood of centers.
So you're not concerned, you're saying that we're talking about the child care center part of...
Yeah, I just don't think it's going to be a problem in the rural ag.
You don't think you're going to see them, period?
No, it hasn't been up until this point. It's still going to be exorbitantly expensive to open a center. And the people who are wanting to provide care are probably going to want to provide care in their home, not building a multi-thousand square foot structure to do this.
So if that's your feeling, then do we just not even address this part of the legislation? It seems like we have to do something here, right?
The only thing that I would say you have to do, and you don't have to do, but I strongly recommend, is consolidating your terminology. And so if the intent for childcare in rural ag was always home-based, and I don't know if anybody who's currently on the board was part of those discussions when that zoning came into effect, or if it's been on the books since 1947, the rural ag needs a distinction, whether it's the home-based or the center-based, because right now, it's using terminology that doesn't align with anything, and so it's open to misinterpretation.
Adopted in 92.
92.
Yeah.
Okay, who was here in 92?
Who remembers?
I think I probably was.
Do you remember?
But no, I don't, no.
And I do want to say, we also allow a hospital in the licensed nursing home in rural ag. So
Yeah.
I think we just need maybe to take a better look at rural ag altogether if we're going to require additional permits for a child care facility.
If we can just, do the usual site plan on it, that's fine, that would work. Because like you just brought up, yeah, we have nursing homes allowed in there, site plan approval, all kinds of things like that in there, but if it just triggers a site plan, then it'd work.
See, that's my big issue, is a child care, what do we call it? A child care center can generate a lot of traffic, and we need the children to be safe. We need to understand what the circulation on the lot's going to be like, what the drop-off is going to, it needs to function in a way that we can address through site plan review.
Well, do we need another category? If we use these categories that we're talking about here in rural ag as well, it's almost like we're allowing the same thing in there without site plan approval. If we have a different category that says child care facility, but we define it, it's different from these, to trigger a site plan review in rural ag. See what I'm saying there?
Would it be appropriate to identify a threshold of number of kids that would trigger a site plan review? Is that done anywhere else? So say like over 12 kids, we would require site plan review, just spitballing.
I'm not sure that's done elsewhere. You know, I mean, I think generally there just is the distinction that centers are not in residential,
Right.
generally. And the only reason we're having this discussion is because of the way it's listed in your zoning currently. And I don't know if anybody can think of a center separate from a residence, a standalone center for daycare and nursery facility or
Kindergarten, yeah.
Is there anything like that in Swanzey?
Oh, yeah. I'm wondering what district it's in.
Wasn't there one up at the Carpenter home?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't,
Right. That is the one that I was talking about before, but they wound up having to get a variance to operate there. Well, the town had to get a variance for them.
oh,
to
the
operate
town,
there.
that's right, yeah. So maybe it doesn't apply.
It probably wasn't listed in that zone, but it's listed in the rural ag, daycare or kindergarten facility.
Because I think that's residential.
It is residence, yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, if we kept that category and defined it, because we're going to already have definitions of childcare center and the other childcare or family daycare center home and those things in there. If we, what I'm saying is if we use that name and replace it into the daycare, you know, replace the daycare center with that one there, then we're pretty much allowing that with everything that goes with it, meaning no site plan.
Correct.
Yep, so.
Unless you, instead of replacing it with child care center, you just kind of get rid of it and understand that the home-based provisions will apply to it.
Or I'm saying if we just leave daycare and kindergarten facility, which is there already, and define that as similar to these, that we could have a separate definition for it, and just leave it at that.
I think the main part of this is consolidating the definitions. Daycare and kindergarten facility, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it doesn't define any of these categories necessarily.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying we'd define it. We'd put it in the definitions. We'd
Right.
decide what it means.
I
That's what
think if
I'm
we're gonna
suggesting.
do anything, we should either delete it and let the home-based provisions, the new home-based care provisions, take effect into this district, which it would if it was placed in Section 3. Or if we're gonna do anything with rural ag, we replace that with daycare facility. Is that what it's called? I keep forgetting the name of it. That's what it's called. Child care center.
Sorry, I'm getting it wrong too.
I
It's a
think.
little bit silly, but
I think it makes sense. I am, of course, for leaving it and changing that to childcare facility, but it does make sense to remove it and have this be a more residential care option. It's up to the, I mean, ultimately it's up to the board, but I don't think we should be keeping daycare or kindergarten facility. That needs to go. It doesn't make sense for 2026.
So we could do that. Get rid of it entirely. And leave the daycare home and daycare, just daycare, family daycare home. Can't
Yeah.
get used to that one there yet.
Maybe while we're down there, we can look at hospital or licensed nursing home.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, there's a lot in there that we allow.
Hospital, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff there that could go in. But, yeah, and just keep it to the residential neighborhood, so to speak, which is actually going to be a business anyways, but residential uses, close to those.
So we almost just need to do a grid of the different zones and the different new definitions and.
I think that's what Sarah's probably going to be doing in the near future.
Yeah, I'll give this to you.
Near future, yeah. It's
Yeah, very near future.
Yeah.
Near and past, yeah.
okay, so it will be permitted by right, childcare centers, or however this is written, I'm sorry, it's starting to, in the business district, BB1 and BB2. And commercial industrial,
I would say not, just because
that's fine.
of the,
And if you wanted, you could allow it in commercial industrial by special exception. Do you want to do that? Or do you want to just not have it there?
I
We
would
have a
not
lot.
have it there. I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot if we allow them in there and then a business comes that's not compatible with it. What do we do?
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
But then you got the commercial business that wants to offer their
Well,
employees
We
childcare.
can do that though, yeah. I think that's probably in our current zoning, isn't it?
I think this is just a problem with the way some of our land is zoned, because we have that big swath of 1,000-foot buffer of commercial industrial, and logically, a lot of those properties would work for a childcare center, but when you read what the commercial industrial district should be used for, then maybe it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think the way it is now, I mean, I would be in favor of a special exception, but again, I can see the argument for the other side.
Yeah, the only really special exception I see is if, some 500-person employer came in and they wanted to have daycare within that facility.
Exactly.
I could see that being allowed in the commercial or industrial area.
Both below
But
that
just
by special exception.
not as a standalone business there, because that's where these other factors really play out more.
Should we discuss the merits of special exception at another meeting? Because I feel like that might be a long conversation. I think, again, Stefan and I looked at the current uses in the commercial industrial district and the industrial district. We haven't found any businesses that would endanger, not endanger children, but that would violate any health codes for children's centers nearby. We can't identify any potential that would move in, but of course there's always potential in that district. Yeah.
Well, I can think of a couple that I know of down in the south, like commercial chemical companies. You probably would not want to let them have a childcare center inside of one of their buildings. Sure.
Well, it wouldn't be inside of those buildings.
Or even close to the building, really.
But one of the provisions in the commercial industrial district is that they can't be emitting those dangerous chemicals. And so we have it written in our ordinance that they can't be, forgot the wording, I read it earlier, but yeah, I think we have safety measures in place already.
Well, in one of the districts where you do allow childcare centers is the industrial park district.
We do have
it's in there somewhere,
a big apartment complex there also. So,
But there is, so you'll leave it out for commercial, industrial, and industrial park. Do you guys, do you like the provision on page 5 that's listed as 3 brackets X, childcare center, industrial, or manufacturing use compatibility? A childcare center shall not be permitted on a lot containing an existing industrial or manufacturing use or adjacent to an existing industrial or manufacturing use unless the childcare center is intended exclusively for the children of employees of the industrial or manufacturing use.
So this is something you're suggesting, or this is one of the requirements?
This is, it's sort of a little bit of both. So it's somewhere in 6741.
if it helps you, the section above that, you said that the districts could incorporate the language. So that just implies that we don't have to.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, industrial and manufacturing districts don't need to incorporate the language, but if you chose to, because right now you're already allowing this in the industrial park district, and, if home daycare is allowed in the commercial industrial district because it goes down Baseball Road, does it make sense to prohibit daycare centers? And there have been a lot of good arguments made for it does make sense to prohibit that use because it might prevent future commercial uses that are unanticipated at this moment in time.
Is there, maybe this is getting too philosophical, but is there an argument to be made to disallow those uses because it would squash the small business owners, as it were, like kind of like a Walmart moving in and destroying local businesses, like big daycare centers moving in and taking business away from home businesses? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I
so
was kind of spitballing here.
to sort of answer that, I could speak to that a little bit with a couple of changes that have happened in Keene recently. The Keene State College Childcare Center was recently not exactly bought out, but kind of bought out.
I'm dealing with
and
this, yeah.
Is under new management that's no longer the college. It's, you know, like a corporate childcare center, and the same thing recently happened with Cheshire Medical Center's childcare program. Because it's more affordable for these large employers to provide this care by bringing an outside entity in. So that's all possible, and we'll see how that plays out, whether that's better or worse for our communities and our children.
It's only top of mind because I'm dealing with it right now, so, yeah.
Okay, so,
That, we're still talking about the manufacturing use compatibility one, correct? Yeah.
yeah, and we can scrap that, and I can just rewrite this. So
I
it
don't,
is-
I don't know that we have to scrap it, because it makes sense, and it gives us leeway, a little bit more leeway, if we want to allow one that is to that specific business, is pretty much what it's giving privilege to.
Yeah, and there is an allowance, again, I'm not wearing my glasses, so I cannot read this, and I apologize for that. There is something in here that speaks to that, so that you can allow it on manufacturing and industrial properties if it's exclusively for employees of the property.
And again, both of these that we're talking about 10 and item 3X, the childcare centers, and then childcare center, industrial and manufacturing use compatibility. Those are still pertaining to the business district. We aren't talking about commercial industrial right now, are we?
They can or they can't.
They can, but I mean, that's what we're talking about now. We're just talking about business now, aren't we, Adam?
This specifically relates to commercial industrial.
It does.
Business, it's just permitted by right. And
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
okay, so, let's see.
I see what you're saying, Scott. Yes, so this is meant to cover you in case you have any manufacturing
In those
or
zones.
industrial compatibility issues already existing in those districts.
Where we're allowing it, yeah, okay, that was my question.
Business and we want to move to.
That was, yeah, that's what I was getting at, thank you.
So, child care centers. I mean, I know we're not voting on it, but if I'm following the discussion, it's allowed in all 3 business districts. And we're saying perhaps it'll be a special exception in both industrial districts.
An industrial park, yes.
Industrial park
And
commercial industrial.
and commercial industrial.
Certainly not allowed in the residence.
Well, not
It's not.
the
A child
centers.
care
right.
center
The
is
centers
not.
are not, yeah.
And we're not sure where we're at with the rural ag. But I think we left out a special exception possibly.
so we can do a quick rundown with the 2 different definitions. That was really good for the child care center. I think that sums it up for child care centers. And then when we're speaking about group family daycare home and family daycare home, that's just permitted by right if you have a lawfully existing residence. I think that's the kind of big umbrella overview. This is the first meeting that we're talking about this. I'm going to try to visualize this a little bit better because it's just really dense. There's a lot to go through. It's kind of impossible to present this information in a better way than what we have right now. But now that it's been introduced to you all, I think we can have a one-pager, kind of like a brief overview memo on this information, so we can dig more into the thought process behind maybe allowing it as a special exception, maybe not allowing it altogether.
What triggers a site plan review?
Exactly, yeah. I think we can dig more into it once we all understand it a bit better in our heads, because even I'm having some trouble understanding this fully.
Well, that's why I want to summarize at least that part of the discussion to see where it fits my thinking as a voting member.
Page 7 does a really good job.
Only because I created a chart.
Yeah. Page 7 does a really good job of going over what the next steps should be for the planning board. let me just quickly read that out, and then we can wrap up this initial discussion. So step 1 would be to confirm alignment with the Planning Commission's recommended approach for family daycare home and group family daycare home, or whether it would like to review additional options. Confirm alignment, step 2 would be to confirm alignment with the Planning Commission's recommended approach for child care centers on commercially zoned land. Step 3, decide whether child care centers, as defined in the proposed amendment, should be allowed in the rural agricultural and residence district. If so, whether the existing approval pathways should change. The current ordinance allows daycare type uses by right in rural ag and special exception in the residence. I added a little note that said, well, never mind, doesn't apply. Step 4, determine whether any existing or anticipated industrial or manufacturing uses in the commercial industrial district or industrial park would make nearby child care centers inappropriate or incompatible. My note here just states that this needs more research. At the time, we haven't identified any existing uses that would make child care centers inappropriate or incompatible, but we don't know what's coming in the future, so hard to predict.
Yeah, it's not the existing ones, it's the future ones, yeah.
Yeah. So before we get to amendment season, I'm anticipating us discussing this again in preparation for a public hearing. I'm anticipating really only one meeting before a public hearing, just to get our ducks in a row, to decide how we want to write this language. The next time we discuss this, I will try to have some language that mirrors what's presented to you in the memo. And if I have any questions on that, I'll probably confer with Sarah, and we can try to get that squared away. Are there any other final notes that you want to hit on, Sarah?
I guess want clarity of what I'm doing versus what you're doing. I was planning on sending some revisions based on tonight's discussion to Adam, and we'll kind of work together to make sure that it is in a more digestible format. But in the meantime, you guys will be quizzed on this document. Just kidding, I agree, it is very dense, and to your credit, other communities that I'm doing this work with, they're only dealing with the family daycare homes. They're not tackling the commercial child care centers at the same time. So it was a lot.
I think this was really helpful. Thank you for putting it together, really.
Just
otherwise I wouldn't have been able to.
One more question before you leave there. So the term family daycare home and the term group family daycare home, those are in the RSAs? That's the wording, so that's the wording we're going to use in our definitions and everywhere else.
You don't have to follow the wording. You can just reference it in your definitions. You can say, home daycare, and then in the definition reference family daycare homes.
We probably ought to keep it as it's mentioned in the RSAs. I'm just saying it was just kind of stumbling over those words, mentioning it, and rather than a daycare facility or something that rolls right off the tongue, but these are kind of stumbly. But if it's in the RSAs, we probably ought to stick to that.
It's in there for now. We'll see if it's still there next year.
Okay, yeah.
Anything else? Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, you guys.
We really appreciate it.
Hope I don't wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about this stuff.
Okay. That's when you get up and take a shot of Jameson's. Forget about it.
So I just have a couple of really quick other businesses. It's become clear to me that the version of the site plan review regs that I have is not complete. So I wonder if I could get a print copy.
Yeah, we got some at Town Hall.
Perfect.
So if you want to come in tomorrow, we have some
Okay.
at the front of my desk. We have some.
Okay, great.
Which actually, I'm going to reprint them again with this two-word amendment.
Yeah.
So
I could wait.
maybe give me till Monday. I'll have a new one printed.
Okay, great. And if anybody else needs an up-to-date, I was missing some pages apparently. And then finally, a citizen let me know that sometimes when we post public notices for for applications, we're not including, in addition to the map and lot, we need to also include the street address, and just to make sure that we do that.
Sometimes there is no street address.
Okay, but sometimes I think we,
No, so whenever there's not a street address included, one doesn't exist.
okay.
So sometimes it's not addressed, and then when it gets built on, it gets addressed through EMS. Yeah, a lot, because otherwise it's just like 000 blank road, which doesn't mean anything, and when you type it into GIS, it doesn't go anywhere. I can't.
But we usually say on the road, right?
If there's no address, I just put tax map and lot.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's raw land, the post office is not gonna have an address on it anyway.
Yeah.
Any other business?
Funny business.
Nope.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Second?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.